In a sense, I see you as being in the frontier of evangelism in many ways. So I admire very much what you're doing.
Yeah, can I speak to that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Your daughter was Sophia, right?
Sonia.
Sonia,
You're
I'm
close.
sorry. Yeah,
one letter.
No, Sonia, I remember her, and she's an amazing person. She wasn't involved with crew, but she's involved with InterVarsity, I think, when she was at Harvard. And
yes.
I mean, we do see students like her, like Sonia, coming into the university who have, I think, been raised in an incredible Christian home, but who, not in her case, but in the case of some, who, without a Christian body there. Really, and it's not that they haven't been trained to even make sense of their faith, and it's not that they aren't even aware often of good answers to some of the objections and the challenges and the questions that come up in the context of being a student at a place like Harvard. But it's that you can feel, apart from that community, very isolated and as if the whole world is set against you, and that if anyone that's reasonable and thoughtful, including and especially the professors themselves who are posing the attacks often, you know, it's very possible to think it's hard to hold on to that faith. You know, when there is a faith community that has thought about this and that is sort of like together, not only like still holding to those beliefs, but living out the Christian life in a community on a campus, it just gives them, I mean, it just holds them in a way that just the idea doesn't. Is that, I don't know what you
makes perfect sense. You know, in the case of Sonia, for example, just take my daughter who graduated from Harvard in 2006, just to illustrate the journey, which is so clear to us here and so immediate in her case. You know, Sonia, we live about a half a mile away from Harvard, and we're pastors, her parents. So, and she was very involved in the church, the local church here in Boston. One would think, well, she doesn't need any kind of reinforcement, you know, while on campus, but we felt absolutely the opposite. We felt that she needed to have very credible types of leaders who she could identify with intellectually. She could be in dialogue with in those immediate concerns there on the campus and the pressures that were on her life. And the fact is that campus ministry, and you guys also, having gotten to know her as well, I mean, played a hugely significant role. Because I think to see people like you, who are, you know, strong thinkers and, you know, very winsome individuals, also holding Christian values, is an apologetic in itself. Yeah. And that's something that reinforces where their Christian beliefs are being questioned all the time. But just the fact that they can be in touch with you and what you represent already is ministry in itself. But now Sonia is working in New York City for Teach for America, which is an organization that has huge impact on you know, inner city students all over the United States, and doing some very strategic work recruiting you know, leaders for the organization. So already she's exercising, you know, a lot of influence on on the larger culture, but you link that influence that, you know, your ministries had on that life, which hopefully will continue to, you know, have more influence and be more encompassing in its outreach. And that's really sort of the essence of what you guys are doing. You're preparing young leaders who, by virtue of the fact that they're so advanced intellectually, are going to be exercising a powerful influence on the culture, and you're making sure that they're imprinted in that time in their life with the values of the kingdom. I think it's just absolutely extraordinary. You guys began in Princeton. Are you still there? And how's that work going there and in other parts where you are?
Yeah, the work was established there. It was, in a sense, almost a trial run to see if the ministry model that was being developed and continues to evolve was effective, and it was there, and so we implemented it here, and then now the ministry has planted works on 6 of the 8 Ivy League schools. So, and it's proving to be effective, and I think we're what we enjoy the most, what the students appreciate is just what Pat's referring to. We have to meet them in a level of cognitive, you know, the dissonance they might feel. We have to help them work through those things. I always find it so helpful to give them permission to doubt and struggle. I think some, especially with the faith backgrounds, almost think that they should not, and that it's wrong for them to wrestle deeply with the larger issues and questions in life. And so it's kind of our privilege to give them the space and to wrestle. I think we would do them a disservice if we tried to just say, no, you just have to, you have to believe it, you have to, don't consider that, that's risky. I mean, to even indirectly say that, I think we have to, with integrity, say, let's look squarely at the counter arguments here, at this, can we trust God? I mean, we just have to look squarely at that. And so I think the students appreciate that. And I think because they are thoughtful, many of them, and they desire to be reasoned, if you feed them the right materials and let them tap into some of the best thinkers in Christian history, it's exciting to see what happens there. Yeah.
Now, how do you deal with the other dimension? Do you take a kind of an apologetics approach when you meet this potential client, let's say, on freshman week, and what first comes into your mind? Does the apologetics part of the gospel, and I'm compartmentalizing here, I know it's a little more complex than that, but do you see the thrust of your ministry as one in which you muster good arguments in favor of the gospel, or do you also see that other part, which is the spiritual side? I think there's an element of spiritual conflict even when you enter into relationship and to present the gospel. There's a spiritual dynamic that is at play in a paralanguage, so to speak, or subtext that is there. Even as you make these arguments and you present the gospel, there's also a spiritual force and a spiritual process at work of the Holy Spirit convicting, and elements of spiritual power and vitality that you need to have in your own life. Prayer, God doing mysterious things in the life of a student, divine connections in a particular moment of need on the part of a student, and you being there present. All kinds of other elements that go beyond just your being able to present, a nice, credible argument in favor of the gospel. How do you process those two things? Take it in anyway. I know it's a complex thing, but
to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Before we ever talk to a student, we're very prayerful because we realize we can't do anything apart from the power of God's Spirit. And so every time before we initiate with a student, we pray for that student. But the first few weeks of campus was one of the most life-giving weeks ever for me of campus ministry. I shared the gospel 25 times, and it was just delightful. With every time that I shared it, I just was more excited about introducing people to Jesus, helping them to know him. And through that process, so I just share the gospel with every single person. And then through that process, some things happen, like you find out some people are already believers, and others realize they thought that they were, but by the time I'm finished sharing the gospel, they can see they really aren't, but they want to become a Christian. And then other people aren't ready yet, and they have questions. And that's where the questions arise for me, is after I present the gospel and talk about what's holding the person back from responding to the initiating love of Christ.
Well, I know that you're, Tammy, you're very involved with and very interested in pastoral issues of spiritual formation, and the whole spiritual journey, and all those elements of just ministering to the soul and creating discipleship and so on and so forth. And I also believe that you work with Park Street Church as well in their college ministry. Do you find that those concerns of spiritual formation and discipling and so on have enabled you to be a better campus minister?
Yes, the decade of my 40s, I became more involved in contemplative practices, so silence, solitude, the discipline of Lectio Divina, and also examine, just looking back on the day, what was life-giving, what was life-thwarting, and just being able to share spiritual practices with people, I think helps them deepen in their walk with God. So it's one of the most exciting things to the girls I work with.
How do you unfold that in the practical? I mean, do you have small groups or cell groups or one-on-one? How does that work out for you?
Yeah, so one of the things, I meet women individually periodically when things arise in their lives that they really need to talk about individually. But mostly I like to work with people in groups because I think it's more dynamic. So the small group for us is the nexus for our spiritual growth. And so I just actually model the practices in the group, and then the girls turn around and teach them to the people that they're working with. So, but then the Park Street piece, I was thinking about that with your last question. I just think for us, we have a formal partnership with Park Street Church. And so I just hope all pastors consider the way that the campus ministries can build people during their college years and then send them into the church, just like you do, and the way Gordon Hugenberger and others at Park Street do. Because as we look into the church, some of the key leaders in the church positions are from Christian Union, InterVarsity, and Campus Crusade, because they've been so well trained on the college campus. They can just step right into the church. And so we actually have a program as seniors. We help the students transition. There's a person who graduated from our ministry who works with seniors who are graduating and helps them. So we have a retreat for seniors, helping them to transition to the workplace, think about what they're going to do, how they're going to find a church and get connected immediately, how they're going to serve in the church, how they're going to give to the church and support ministries of the church. So we're excited about the transition and how church and parachurch can work together.